Vegas and Florida dropped the puck for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. We'll tee that one up for you guys. And we got some more questions in the mailbag that we didn't get to earlier in the week, so we'll finish up with those as well. You're listening to Locked On Leafs Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano from TSN, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, earlier in the week we did a mailbag segment, and we ended up getting tons of questions. So it ended up kind of being dispersed into two different shows. You can go back and listen to those. But there were still some questions left over, and we said we would get to them later in the week. So we're actually going to get to those a little bit later on in today's show. So definitely make sure that you stay tuned. We'll get to the rest of those questions if we didn't get to you earlier in the week. A couple of real solid ones still out there for us to have some good discussions. So I'm excited for that. But Dave, tonight's Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. We got the series shifting into Florida. They are now the home team and hopefully have a little bit more momentum that they can try and build by being at home. Do you give them any shot in hell of getting back into this thing down 2-0?
Yeah, I mean, you always want to. The home team will always say that they need that one home game to see if they have that opportunity to get back to the series. And for Florida's sake, if they go down 3-0, it's gonna be all she wrote. Like
curtains, buddy, curtains.
Yeah. Like
I saw a stat that though to give Florida a little bit of hope. Since the year 2000, when a team goes down 2-0 in a series, the team who is 0-2 heading into Game 3 is 10-2 in those third games. So it's a good trend if you're the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna have a lot have to go right for them in order to reverse the trend that they're currently on right now. But what I do think when you look at the Panthers and what's been ailing them the first two games of the series, like it's going to be a tough mountain because the very first one that has to happen is Sergei Bobrovsky is going to have to actually turn into a superstar again, right? And Vegas. Now a lot of people are talking about the time off and how that's impacting him. I mean, if he doesn't get it together in Game 3, like that's what it could just mean is Vegas is finding ways to beat him, right? They probably took the time.
They are. I think Vegas deserves a lot of credit for the way that they're playing, the way that they are battling for that net front positioning. They're getting traffic and bodies to the net. Like they certainly are finding ways to beat Bobrovsky. And Florida in front of him needs to find a way to allow him to see pucks. Because if he can't see it, he can't stop it, right? That's another thing, too. I think a lot of credit you can give to the Golden Knights for how well that they've played. But also, I think Bobrovsky, a big reason why he's allowed 8 goals through, what's he played now, 88 minutes of hockey in this series? Yeah, because he got pulled in 12-minute mark.
Yeah.
A big reason for it is the guys in front of him not clearing paths, just not playing well enough in front of him.
Yeah, and, I think a lot's been talked about, having to throw their support behind Bobrovsky, but it's also like maybe also play better in front of him too, right? Like
Exactly.
I just don't understand how you can, say, well, if Bobrovsky turns things around, the Panthers are back on track. But a lot more has to go right, including the Panthers starting to play like they did in the first, 3 rounds, which is keeping the games close and get that timely goal. And unfortunately, right now, like Vegas just has too much firepower, too much depth that you can try to keep the top guys in Jack, but then you're seeing other guys step up. And I think the big one, I mean, Jonathan Marchessault, I said I liked his chances to be a Conn Smythe because, Florida's going to do their best to look after Eichel, Stone, like that line there. And then here comes Jonathan Marchessault, and he's just like, all right, I'll just pick up and, go on a just absolute tear. So I did put a wager down on FanDuel for Jonathan Marchessault to win the Conn Smythe before the third round for the Cup Final. So I'm liking my chances right now with that one.
Yeah, I've got the same wager. I also have got Jonathan Marchessault to lead the Stanley Cup Final in goals scored. Looking good there as well. Mm-hmm. When I'm looking on FanDuel, speaking of, I mean, the Panthers are favored to win this game. They're minus 120 on the money line, expected to win and make this a bit of a series here as the series shifts to home ice. I did find it funny how early in the series it was like 5.5. That was the over under total. It's moved to 6.5. So expecting, I guess, maybe a bit more scoring here on both sides, considering that Bobrovsky is no longer otherworldly like he was for about a month there. So maybe expecting a little bit more goals to be scored as well. So we'll see what ends up happening, but should be a good game. Obviously, the Golden Knights, if they could take a 3-0 lead, I mean, it's just that's it for them, obviously. So they will definitely be looking to do so, similarly to the way they did against the Dallas Stars in the Western Final. All right, let's take a break. Let's come back. Let's get to some of these listener questions that we had for the mailbag earlier in the week. So we'll get to those in just a moment. But before we do, why don't we tell you guys about one of today's show sponsors and our good friends from Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you will have. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You can get tickets of your seat, get images of your seat before you buy it, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy them in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Snag the tickets without any stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast. We do new shows every weekday, Monday through Friday. If you are not subscribed, we ask that if you enjoy the content that we're giving you, go ahead, toss us a subscription. That'd be greatly appreciated up on YouTube. Give us a subscribe. Also, if you're listening wherever you get your podcasts, leave a comment down below. Let us know anything that, let us know the answers to the following questions that we're about to get to here in this mailbag segment. So why don't we get things started here? So if you missed it, we had a part 1 and a part 2 earlier in the week. And so if your question didn't get answered here, then it definitely got answered on part 1 or part 2. So go back and re-listen or watch the earlier episodes from Monday and Tuesday. But we do have a few remaining that we wanted to get to. So we thought this would be a good time to get to that. So let's toss one of these bad boys up here and let's get to it, Dave. Which one?
All right, let's go. Let's go to the Discord here, and we're going to go to Blue 13. Do the Leafs keep the first rounder or move it at the draft? If kept, who are you favoring and why? If moved, what do you see happening?
Ooh. Okay. You can answer the if kept, who are you favoring and why? Because I'll be completely honest, I haven't dug enough into the draft yet. This was going to be my weekend project, was to dig into the draft and start to hone in on some potential Leafs prospects, because they do have that first round pick that they got for Rasmus Sandin. It's the 28th overall pick. It's Boston's original selection. So I'm going to be looking into it this weekend to see exactly which prospects I do like and that are going to be in that range. Do I think that they keep it or move it? I think it's going to depend on what happens. What trades I suppose they can try and do. Like if they have an opportunity to get better, I don't think that they are going to be shy to move that first round pick. I'll say that. If there's a way to get better and if there's a good offer on the table, I don't think they'd be reluctant to move that first round pick. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a pick where you're saying, like, I think it all depends. Like, the Leafs have time to decide really how they want to go about this. And I think the best option will be if a few players that they really want to take have been already snagged off the board, trade back, right? There's going to be teams that will definitely want to trade back in, especially at that point in the draft, in that you get to that like 22 to 23 range. That's where draft boards start to look a little more clear. And sorry, I think that's going to be the Leafs case here, where I think they're most likely to trade it. But I think, if there is a player that's, on their board that maybe falls, you could see them decide, we're just going to keep the pick and we're just going to make a selection here. And actually, for Locked On, we did a little bit of a mock draft. That's going to be coming out, I believe, in the coming weeks, obviously before the draft. Yeah. So I actually put down our pick for who I think the Leafs should pick.
Without even consulting with me, guys. Without even consulting with me, he basically said, Mike, take a seat. I got this. I'm going to go ahead and just turn the card in. No question, no discussion. Dave just said, I got this, pal.
Mike was the Brad Treliving. He wasn't allowed at the draft table, and I just took over, and I just said, yeah, I'm making the pick for us.
Yeah, basically what happened.
So the thing here about with the Leafs pick, and like we know that the Leafs have certainly different avenues they could go. They could go on defense. There are a couple players that intrigue me there. One of them being a London Knight, actually, in Oliver Bonk. He is the son of
Radek.
Yeah, Radek Bonk. So there's some a little bit of a gene there with father son duel. Got decent size, so more of a defensive style defenseman. He did put up 40 points this year playing for London. He's not known well for his offensive game, but he'd be a good solid defensive defenseman. If the Leafs are looking for that in that range, he's likely going to be around in that range. So that's someone that the Leafs could look at there. If the Leafs don't go on defense, and I do think that center is an area that the Leafs could look to acquire or look to address at the draft. And usually you try to get, the centers, we saw Fraserman go in the second round, in last year's draft. I think, there's a few guys that could be there. Like you got Oscar Fisker Molgaard. He's a guy that you could look at in that potential spot there. He's going to roughly be available late first round. So, that's an option there. You can obviously look at other defensemen too. I just think center defense are like the two areas you look at. And when you get to that range, everyone says, we'll take the best player available. Sometimes teams just go with the best on their board. And it might not be a guy that teams have, like scouts or analysts have as pegged the first round pick. But if he's high up on the draft board, that's what I think the Leafs should do. I think they should. Yeah, you don't want to go strictly for positionally. You want to take the best available, but you also have to realize what exactly in your cupboard you need to address. And I think blue liners and centermen are two that the Leafs need to address.
Yeah, they could really use a little bit of anything though. They've got a pretty barren cupboard when it comes to blue chip talent. We'll say like there's a bunch of guys in the Nick Abruzzese range where it's like, yeah, maybe he could become a fourth liner or some sort of like fringe contributor, but they could use a little bit more of higher end upside where it's like, yes, this guy's a legitimate NHLer. We know he's going to be. I'm just looking at some draft rankings right now. Tony Ferrari, our good friend of the show, has Dalibor Dvorsky 21st in his ranking. If Dalibor Dvorsky did get down into like the 20s, that would be someone who I believe Toronto should try and move up for and try and snag, because I doubt he would get down to 28. But if he does start to slip a little bit, that'd be someone who I think would be interesting. 6'1", 200 pounds. He's a centerman playing in the men's league overseas already. You saw him play at the World Juniors. Well, I watched him play at the World Juniors. I thought that he was really, really good when he was there. So to me, Dalibor Dvorsky would be a really interesting name if he were able to kind of slide all the way down for the Maple Leafs. I don't see that happening. I think he's a guy who's like top 15 for sure, maybe even could get into the top 10, but that is someone who Tony Ferrari has slid down his prospect rankings a little bit. So that's kind of an interesting name to keep an eye on, I would say, as well. All right, let's get to another one.
All right, so we're gonna go with another Discord. I mean, the rest of them are from the Discord, so I should note that. It's talking about a current Calgary Flames defenseman, someone that former Flames general manager and current Leafs general manager Brad Treliving knows a little thing about. Who moves for Rasmus Andersson in Calgary? What is the first failed experiment Brad Treliving brings in to stir things up? I was a little confused about that question at first when I read it.
Well, yeah, I get it. This is a bit of a chirp, I guess, at Brad Treliving, like, because most guys, GM sometimes will start to bring in their old players, case in point, Kyle Dubas and the Sioux, right? Dubas always went and brought in guys from the Sioux. So I think he's saying, all right, what's another failed experiment type of guy who Brad Treliving maybe, didn't work out somewhere else, but he had him in Calgary at once and maybe wants to bring him back into the fold. Like, if I go and I look at Calgary, like that team in particular, and if there's anyone I'm looking at as maybe someone who could make their way over to Toronto, who is in Calgary, like, I don't know if I see anyone really that makes a whole lot of sense here. Like, could you bring in a Milan Lucic to be like a fourth line winger for this team? I don't know. Like, I don't see a whole lot of guys in Calgary that are really dudes who I think make a lot of sense to trade for. Maybe Rasmus Andersson is potentially like a guy you could look at. Juuso Välimäki in Arizona was a Brad Treliving draft pick once upon a time. Maybe they go kind of picking at Arizona for defensemen. I would not want to see them trade for Rasmus Andersson though. Like, he's okay, but it's a bit of a high cap hit for me at 4.5 for the next 3 years. And he really had a bit of a down year, and injuries also kind of got in the way a couple of years ago. He's okay. What do you have? 49 points this year in 79 games, 11 goals. So, like, he's coming off of a career season. Maybe he could go after a guy like Rasmus Andersson, but why would they trade him? I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't see. Yeah, you always see GMs, as you mentioned, go after players, and I just think you also look at what Craig Conroy is trying to do in Calgary. He's not looking to blow things up, right? No. He's going to want to he's going to want to improve this roster. So, like, someone like Rasmus Andersson, he might not even want to consider moving, right?
Oh, okay. So I misread this, actually. So it appears maybe Canadian Rangers asking us, like, to get Rasmus Andersson, who would you have to trade? So, like, who moves for Rasmus Andersson? So who would the Leafs have to give up for Rasmus Andersson? Okay. Probably like a decent amount, I would think, to be honest with you. Like, he's a right shot, top 4 defenseman.
26-year-old.
Would take a lot of money, who signed for the next 3 years. Probably would take quite a bit to try and get this guy signed. I would think that first round pick probably would have to be in play. The one that the Boston Bruins that you got from the Washington Capitals, which is the Boston Bruins pick. And then from there, you're probably looking at, giving up, potentially, a couple of prospects here. Could Nick Robertson be involved potentially if they want to bring in, a scoring winger as a prospect? Maybe that could be something that could be part of the fold. Potentially one of these other prospects that they have. Fraser Minton? Do they want to go down that department? Do they want to go maybe a Topi Niemelä, William Villanove? They've got a few goaltending prospects. I suppose they could try and move away, but I don't know. I don't know if I see a real fit, because I would assume that Calgary will be looking to do a hockey trade. I don't know if I see like a straight up hockey trade that makes a lot of sense for both teams.
Yeah, I just don't see the fit there. I mean, look, Brad Treliving has mentioned that he wants to improve the defense, and we know that like Rasmussen would probably be a decent fit, but it's where would he play, right? Like, what's his role? Because right now, I would say he's like, he's obviously top 4. I think probably one of the top power play guys. We know that's Morgan Riley's spot right there. So I just don't know what exactly a deal would look like there. And again, I just don't think that's something that Treliving will be able to pry from Craig Conroy.
All right, why don't we take one more quick break, Dave, and we get back to the final couple of questions that we have here awaiting our mailbag before we can finally put a bow and answer every single one of these questions from our listeners. And before we get into all that, buddy, I want to tell the good friends about our other show sponsor today.
Yep. If you're looking for something that's going to fit you right and also look good, why don't you go and try Birddogs? Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton, and they fix the issue, by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but stretched so you get way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. I use them when I go out golfing. That's the perfect thing you can have. You want something that's gonna, not gonna be stiff. You want it to move easily, and they use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. As you said, it's perfect for when you're going out golfing. So I don't have my Birddogs on right now. Unfortunately, I'll have to make sure I do that with these ad reads going forward. But they are they're actually so easy because you can customize the inseam, the size of the inseam, and there's so many great options and great styles with these Birddogs. And you get a free gift if you use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL when you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. You get a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. The Birddogs, so go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you that.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We're continuing to do the remaining questions that we have from our mailbag segment that we did earlier in the week. Just a couple of loose ends that we didn't get to because it was just going a little long. So we said, we'll do them a little later in the week, and here we are. So we've got a couple more. Let's get to them. Toss another one up here on the screen, Dave.
All right. Let's see. Let's go back to Blue 13 because I actually like this one a little bit. What move can GM Brad Treliving make that will catch you off guard and leave you surprised?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is trading Austin Matthews. That would be the easy answer. Did you have another answer, though?
Oh, I was just going to say anyone from the core 4 being traded, right? Like,
I think catch you off guard, though. Like,
most surprising.
That wouldn't catch me off guard.
It would, in a way, because we've kind of been resigned to the fact that we expect them to be back.
Would you be caught off guard if you traded away TJ Brodie?
Yeah, probably, because no one's talking about TJ Brodie being traded, right? But he's also, I think he's a pending UFA, so it wouldn't be the most. I mean, it would be surprising because no one's talking about it. Like, maybe that's what. I mean, you're kind of alluding to and being surprised because no one's talking about it.
Well, that's what catch you off guard. Like last year, for example, when Florida traded Huberdeau, it's like Huberdeau was available. What? Like that caught you off guard,
right?
Everyone's talking about the core 4, and everyone's saying you need to trade one of the core 4 players. That would not catch me off guard if he actually dealt one of those guys. It's more of a it finally happened type of situation. But if he were to trade TJ Brody, a guy who he actually has like a long relationship with dating back to the days in Calgary, that would surprise me. But at the same time, I wonder if that could be a possibility, Dave. TJ Brody just had his 33rd birthday yesterday. We did see him start to take a step back this year in the regular season and then more specifically in the playoffs. I'm not saying that I'm concerned with TJ Brody and his game and his contract, but we keep talking about how it seems like Brad Treliving doesn't want to trade one of the core four and isn't going to move on from the coach. So if that's the case and they keep running it back with the same core and coach, how are you really expecting things to be different? Well, I think that means you need to make change on the blue line. And the only way to really make significant change and bring in, talent that I think could bring the impact of that could impact change, I suppose, is to bring in better talent. And to do that, you've got to give up some money. And you could get that maybe with TJ Brody's money if you move on from him and trade him.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be upset if they decide to move TJ Brody because, look, you also brought in Jake McCabe, who is cheaper, right? And you got him under contract a little longer. And, if you can...
Right, like left shot. You've got Mo's a left shot. You've got McCabe who's a left shot.
You don't have...
Technically Gio also.
Yeah, right? And, I mean, Gio is probably going to be one of those, not going to play the full season, right? I think they finally realized that maybe just playing him too much was not really the smart move on their part, but they also just didn't have the depth to consider other options. I just look at TJ Brody and look, if he's back, he's going to play top four. You know exactly what you're going to get out of him. But, and I think you bring up a good point, is like, can they maybe do something a little better than TJ Brody? Like, can TJ Brody be moved and then they find a way to make it work where they get an upgrade? Now, you're not going to trade TJ Brody for an upgrade, but maybe you can find a defenseman that can do things different, or you're just going in a different route, right? And you try to get something for TJ Brody now before, like, I don't see TJ Brody resigning here after his contract, just because he's probably going to want maybe one last payday if he can go and get it.
I don't know. At 30, he'll be 34 by the time this contract is up. I don't know if he'll be able to get a payday, like a multi-year deal at more money than he's making here, $5 million. I'd be surprised.
Well, not going to be $5 million, but he might get multiple years at a number that works for him.
Potentially, but that would be something that I think would classify as like catch you off guard and be like, wow, I didn't expect to see TJ Brody get dealt. We always talked about the core four and like Kerfoot and Hall and Youngvall and like these other players, Matt Murray, and all of a sudden the guy who leaves is TJ Brody, who's been kind of the steady defenseman over the course of the last few years and actually has a long-lasting relationship with Brad Treliving. That would catch me a little off guard, I suppose. But hey, if it betters the team, I would be for it. Let me at least say that.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for any. I think if you're going to go into next season with the same roster, I just don't see that being something that this team can do. Just because it's clear when you're looking at a team like Vegas, what they've done. That you got to change the formula a little bit, because it's just not going to be good enough when you're seeing how good these other teams are.
And here's something too. So when he originally signed his contract with Toronto, right? First year, no move clause. Second year, 2 and 3 of the deal, no trade clause. It's now moves to a modified no trade with a 10-team no trade list. So that leaves 22 other teams that he could get flipped to, and he would have no say in it. He'd have to go and play out the final year of that contract. I will say that he is owed significantly more cash than AAV. That's a $700 no, $7.5 million in actual cash as opposed to just a $5 million AAV. So would that scare off some teams? Perhaps, and it's all salary too, no signing bonus. But yeah, that's an interesting name. An interesting name, Dave. Could you beat that? Could you beat TJ Brody for catch you off guard?
For catch you off guard? Oh man, off the top of my head, you took the good one. So, like, would you get caught off guard if they traded Timothy Liljegren?
Maybe, like, not.
It wouldn't be like, oh snap!
I would be caught off guard if they traded Liljegren for like another prospect, obviously. But if it's like a hockey deal or they're trading for a more established veteran and somebody likes the upside of Liljegren, I think that would make some sense for them to do that. You know, like I think they're looking to get bigger on the back end. Like that's what Brad Treliving's teams have always been. So that's why I look at some of these players and I'm like, okay, size isn't necessarily the calling card on a lot of these players, right? On this blue line, it's a pretty small blue line when you look at it, both in size and height and weight. We'll say. So I do wonder if we'll start to see him put his fingerprints on this team, and that could be focusing on trying to get bigger on the back end, and a guy like Liljegren, not the biggest guy, right? So maybe he would be trade fodder to try and bring in more of what Treliving's looking for back there.
It could pretty much be possible. I think the blue line, the fact that he mentioned it a couple of times, I think it's funny because that's the area that has had the most turnover over the last few years, and we could potentially see more of that. So it'll be very interesting to see if that actually happens.
Yes, 100%. I'm just trying to see what if I can find an average, which I don't believe I can do. Why would it be that easy, right? To try and find an average of height and weight for guys, but there's not a lot of defensemen that they have that are over 200 pounds. Like Liljegren's under 200 pounds, Justin Hall's under 200 pounds, Gustafsson. Gio's right around there. TJ Brody, 187. Is TJ Brody their lightest defenseman? That's actually kind of surprising. But he is. 187 is their lightest blue liner that they currently have on the roster. All right. Is that the last one? I think we got
that's the last one.
We got them all. We did it. It took 3 episodes for us to finish all of them, but we did it, buddy. Good stuff. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms to receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Leave a like and a comment on YouTube down below. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.